So you've probably heard a ton about AI that creates stuff, images, text, all that. But what about AI that actually does stuff? Today, we're going to break down two really important types of artificial intelligence, figure out what makes them different, and look at the surprising way they're starting to team up.
All right, so let's jump right in. And we're going to start with the kind of AI that most of us are, well, already pretty familiar with. You've probably messed around with it to help draft an email, cook up a wild image, or maybe just ask it a random question that popped into your head.
Yeah, we're talking about that super creative but kind of reactive AI that's really taken the world by storm. It's an amazing tool for sure, but here's the thing about its role. It just sits there, waiting for you to tell it what to do.
So what's really going on under the hood? Well, at their core, these things are basically just incredibly sophisticated pattern matching machines. They've digested these massive data sets and learned the statistical links between words or pixels or even musical notes. So when you give them a prompt, they're really just making a very educated guess about what should come next.
And wow, the range of stuff this AI can create is it's staggering. We're talking everything from helping a YouTuber punch up a script to composing some background music or, as one expert even admitted, writing the next chapter of some fan fiction. It's all about making something new from the patterns it's already learned.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The AI generates all these possibilities, right? But then it stops. A human, you, has to be there to look at the content, maybe refine it, and ultimately decide what to do next. It hands you all the puzzle pieces, but you're still the one who has to put the whole thing together. Okay, so that's generative AI. Now, let's switch gears and talk about agentic AI. This is where things get really interesting because it takes that familiar technology and gives it a whole new level of, well, autonomy. If generative AI is your creative assistant, think of agentic AI as your project manager. So, unlike its creative cousin, an agentic system doesn't just make something and then stop. No way. It actively does things. You give it a high-level goal, and it just figures out the steps to get there, all by itself, taking action on its own. So where does this stuff really shine? In managing those messy, multi-step processes. I mean, imagine a personal shopping agent that doesn't just show you a list of products. Instead, it actively hunts down the best deal, handles the entire checkout process, and even coordinates the delivery. It only bothers you if it absolutely has to. And this, right here, this is the secret sauce. It's the loop an agent goes through over and over. First, it perceives the goal, it understands what you want. Then, it decides on the best next step, it executes that action, and then, this is key, it learns from the outcome to get even better for the next go-around. It's this continuous, autonomous cycle of doing and improving. So, if we're going to boil this all down, what's the real difference between these two powerful approaches? Honestly, it all comes down to one simple question. Who's actually in the driver's seat? And this chart lays it all out perfectly, right? Generative AI is your creative partner. You direct it every single step of the way. You curate its output. But agentic AI, that's your task manager. You delegate a goal, and then you just oversee the process while it gets to work on its own. Okay, but wait a minute. You might be wondering, how in the world does an agent think for itself? How does it decide what to do? Well, the answer is actually pretty familiar, and it brings us right back to where we started this explainer. And boom, there it is. This is the big reveal. These two things, they aren't competitors at all. In fact, that same generative AI, specifically the large language models, or LLMs, that power things like chatbots, that's the cognitive engine, the brain that allows an agent to reason and plan. It's all thanks to something called chain of thought reasoning. It sounds complicated, but it's really just the AI brain mimicking how we humans solve tough problems. We break them down into smaller, logical steps. We kind of talk it through in our heads before we act. That's exactly what it's doing. So for that conference planning agent, it's not just jumping in blindly. It's having this little internal monologue, right? Okay, first I need the requirements. Got it. Then I'll research venues. After that, I'll check availability for the ones that fit. This internal strategy session is what makes its actions so much smarter and more effective. So when we look to the future, it's pretty clear that the most powerful AI systems aren't going to be just one or the other. We're moving past simple tools and into an era of, well, true digital partners. Yeah, the future isn't generative or agentic. It's absolutely 100% both.
We're talking about intelligent collaborators that instinctively know when to brainstorm options with you and when to just take the wheel and get the job done. The two are going to work hand in hand. And listen, this isn't some far-off sci-fi future. It's already happening, especially in the business world. Companies are building what they call sovereign AI models. Just think of them as these super-powered agents designed to run securely inside a company's own private systems. This is a game changer because it lets them build agentic workflows that can think and act on their most sensitive private data, totally transforming how they operate.
And that brings us to a final, pretty deep question. As we start handing off more and more of the doing to these autonomous agents, what happens to our role? It really points to a future where we shift from being task managers ourselves to being goal setters, using our creativity and big picture thinking to guide these incredibly powerful